Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Hello everyone, and thanks once again for joining us for this Friday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service. On today's hazardous weather graphic, we've got a winter weather advisory out for the Yukon Delta for tomorrow, starting noon tomorrow, Saturday, and extending into Saturday night for increasing wind, snow, and blowing snow. Increasing 1 to 3 inches of snow expected to fall in the area there, with winds gusting size 40-45 miles an hour. So will create reduced visibilities there. And then there's a winter storm watch out for St. Lawrence Island and the Bering Sea coast for the or Bering Strait coast there. And that's for same conditions except worse, looking for winds to gust St. Lawrence Island possibly as high as 70 miles per hour. And that's for late Saturday into Sunday for this area. And so 1 to 3 inches of snow could also fall there, but those winds, it will could create visibilities down to less than a quarter mile or even near zero at times. Moving on to the satellite imagery, clear skies mostly here, Bristol Bay, southeast Bering Sea, but higher stuff spreading on in. Not too bad Kodiak after about a half inch of snow fell this morning in that area, but that's area clouds already pulled off to the east, and not a bad afternoon. Some clouds in along actually pulled up, that area that brought the light snow, pulled up to the North Gulf Coast today, in areas of very light snow falling, southern Kenai Peninsula, possibly in the Prince William Sound. Over toward Yakutat, picking up a little snow this afternoon, but the southeast coast, for the most part, staying cold and dry, with this moisture shifting off to the east there and will stay to the south. Otherwise, up to the north, we still have a system up here spinning off or along the Arctic coast there, producing areas of snow from that location southwestward across the Noatak Valley, Kivalina, Kotzebue, reporting some light snow today, and down through the Bering Strait to St. Lawrence Island, and possibly some flurries through this zone right through here, and also maybe a few light flurries along the Alaska Range. Otherwise, you can see the front here lifting northward. We've got gale force winds out over all of the Aleutians through tonight, and also the Alaska Peninsula will see increasing winds with that front, the main low center back to the southwest, and mostly cold air locked in over the northern Bering Sea, northward, especially into the Bering Strait. A couple of centers, this original one pulling back to the west there, and won't be much of a factor with this next one pulling up to the north. A little bit farther east than we thought it would be yesterday, but gale force winds will continue again through tonight over the Aleutians, southern Bering Sea, and the Alaska Peninsula. Southeast flow, warmer conditions, so a mixture of rain and snow here for the Alaska Peninsula. Had the light snow again ended over Kodiak, and that kind of lifted up along the North Gulf Coast here this afternoon. Just kind of a narrow band of light snow falling in that area. Mostly clear along the southeast coast. Still some gusty channeled winds here, especially over the eastern border area up in toward Lynn Canal. Otherwise, Arctic high there over the eastern interior, keeping it dry with light winds. Temperatures on the chilly side in that area as well. A little bit of flurry conditions, some clouds, but nothing very heavy at all, and pretty scattered, light by comparison to the heavier precipitation down here to the southwest. And then this trough up there over the northwest, bringing the snow from the central Arctic coast here in North Slope back down towards St. Lawrence Island. Forecast for tonight, again, gale force winds, probably a little stronger than today here for the Alaska Peninsula, beginning to inch in toward Kodiak Island, along with the precipitation returning there. Snow, whatever falls over Bristol Bay. Very light there for king salmon in a southeast, east-southeast wind flow, but still have that band of light snow from Kachemak Bay up the far west side of Cook Inlet to the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range. Also for western Prince William Sound, southern Kenai Peninsula. Flurries are snow showers, light there for the North Gulf Coast about Yakutat again. No change for the Panhandle, strong high pressure holding over the northwest territories of Canada and the Yukon. And light snow possibly here, the Koyukuk Valley again, and this area shifting back to the west a little bit, so becoming more intermittent of snow here for, say, Kotzebue, Kivalina area, maybe Red Dog, but continuing along the western Arctic coast, and rain mixed with snow back to the west there, a little chillier air wrapping back in around over the western and central Aleutians. Moving on to tomorrow's forecast, that entire frontal boundary lifts northward. New low center forms right about here. Been kind of a model difference in exactly the true position and strength of this feature, but definitely it'll be there coming northward. Tight gradient, gale force winds, wet Kodiak Island, mixture precipitation there over the Shelikof Strait area, and probably mostly snow, whatever gets into Kachemak Bay, Iliamna, mixing along the North Gulf Coast here, especially southern coast of the Kenai Peninsula. It looks like some light snow will make it up into Prince William Sound, and western Cook Inlet again, nothing from, say, Palmer, Eagle River down to about Anchor Point. Too much downslope flow, and moisture trying to increase there, but staying off the southeast coast, so staying cold and dry once again through tomorrow. Same thing for the eastern interior, all the way up to the eastern north slope. And then for the forecast for Sunday, looking like this, moisture still staying mostly offshore of the Panhandle, beginning to edge in toward the coastline. Let's look for an increase in the clouds over the inland areas. A little bit more moisture now up into southern Alaska. Clouds spreading up to about the Alaska Range with some higher stuff possibly in the Tanana Valley. And then wind, snow, blowing snow out here for St. Lawrence Island, and blowing snow and blow also for the Yukon Delta there, but not as extensive or severe as St. Lawrence Island we'll see with those 70-mile-an-hour wind gusts. Much lighter winds here south of the front, no gradient. The trough, though, will keep it occasionally showery and unsettled for the Pribilofs as well as the Alaska Peninsula. And then colder air coming back in down from the north there into the Aleutians, maybe some snow showers. Lows for tomorrow morning in the minus 20s to mid-minus 30s here over toward Northway and Tok, to minus 30 around Fort Yukon, Yukon Flats. Should be a little milder than what you saw this morning, where they were down near 40 below around the greater Fort Yukon area, and a little below zero there along the Arctic coast, as well as the northwest areas, 0 to 5, 6, 7 blows for the Yukon Delta and the lower Kuskokwim Valley, or the lower Yukon Valley. Teens for Bristol Bay at Dillingham, for example, and then into the 30s for the Alaska Peninsula, mid-30s for the Aleutians. Southeast coast down to near zero in some locations where you lose the wind, otherwise lower 20s. And then for the highs tomorrow, mostly in the 20s here for the southeast coast, some areas staying in the teens, and milder here, lower 40s into the Alaska Peninsula, Bristol Bay with those southeast winds, near 40 for Kodiak. Below zero north of the Alaska Range, Tanana Valley, especially the east side here, up to the eastern Arctic coast, and a little above zero there for the northwest areas around Kotzebue Sound, and near zero along the central Arctic coast. For Sunday morning, back down to 10 to 15 below on the Arctic coast, minus 20s to the Yukon Valley, 30 below again for the Northway Tok area, upper 30s for the Bristol Bay zone, and teens for the Panhandle, warming to mid to upper 30s possibly along the southeast coast, along the otherwise 20s inland areas, lower 40s again over the southwest here. South central Alaska, mid 20s to mid 30s, and single numbers for the Tanana Valley.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving into aviation, on the weather depiction, IFR here along and on the east side of both the Aleutian Range right on up, looks like across Kachemak Bay and far western Cook Inlet, really the upslope areas of the Alaska Range on up to the north. Another zone of lower conditions out to the west. There was some IFR off the southwest coast, marginal for the Aleutians, VFR eastern and east or southeast coast, eastern interior, IFR western Arctic coast. And then for tomorrow afternoon, this area becomes a little more expansive and kind of shifting up to the northwest a little bit there. But IFR in across Togiak Bay and the Auckland Mountains, still this zone of IFR here along the east side of the Alaska Range, right on down there to the Aleutian Range and about to the peninsula. IFR showing up Kodiak Island, southern Kenai Peninsula, western Prince William Sound area, actually even into the Coast Range there, north of Valdez. Marginal VFR cuts off there right around Yakutat, still VFR for the southeast coast, eastern interior, and Seward Peninsula looking pretty good into the Kobuk Valley, marginal for the western and central Arctic coast. And for Sunday, this zone pulls back, becomes a little more expansive here, but pulling up to the northwest, Pribilof's IFR up to about St. Lawrence Island there on the east side, and then up across Norton Sound into the interior. Expanding VFR here over the Tanana Valley, Copper River Basin, into northern Cook Inlet, so manages to sit in the valley looking pretty good, but IFR persisting there, western Prince William Sound, southern Kenai Peninsula, and VFR once again Sunday morning there for the southeast coast, although marginal stuff showing up on the south coast there, and marginal for the Bering Sea and the Aleutians. Sunday afternoon, again, this zone of IFR still pulling back to the northwest, but hanging on there to Yukon Delta coast and areas, more so for Nunivak Island. And then marginal conditions here inland a little bit, especially across the Yukon Delta, a little less for the Kuskokwim. IFR hanging on to the Auckland Mountains, Kilbrook Range there, and less of this IFR, but persisting with the southeast flow here from the Aleutian Range up the east side of the Alaska Range there, with VFR for the Susitna Valley, and IFR a little more expansive for Prince William Sound and the eastern Kenai Peninsula zone. Pretty good VFR up over the interior, and still VFR across the Panhandle. Anaktuvik, marginal tomorrow, same forecast for Adigan. And looking at Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR, IFR on both eastern entrances. That same forecast also holds for Rainy. IFR there on the east entrance. Better conditions, could be VFR into the Kuskokwim Valley, but marginal definitely through the pass. And for Windy, marginal VFR, south entrance, otherwise VFR on up to the north through the north entrance there. And Isabel, VFR. Could be some marginal stuff, maybe just back to the west or southwest, but going for basically a VFR kind of day tomorrow. Mentasta, same forecast. Tanita, VFR. Portage, marginal, becoming IFR in the afternoon. Chilkoot and White, VFR for the next couple of days. Freezing levels, 2,000 feet, just barely getting into the Alaska Peninsula and south of the Queen Charlotte's there. So moving on to icing, southeast flow here, pulling some good moderate icing right up just south of Kodiak Island into the Aleutian Range, Bristol Bay, and possibly into the mountains there, with light to isolated moderate icing here from the southwest coast back into the west central Aleutians. Jet stream, southerly flow now, warmer conditions, more moisture coming north from south here. Only about 50 knots getting up to Bristol Bay there, ridging Gulf of Alaska, north to northwest flow 60 knots here, picks up around the Queen Charlotte's. Southwest flow in the interior, across the interior at about 65. And the 9,000 foot wind flow graphic showing this, southeast 35 knots, up to 50 knots there across Kodiak Island, and then diminishing again as you cross Bristol Bay with 35 knot winds across the Pribilof, southeast 20 to 25, Alaska Peninsula, northwest just 10 to 20 for the Aleutians, a little stronger out towards Shimia. Light winds here for the southeast coast, and southwest flow 30 to 35 across the eastern interior here. And for 3,000 feet southwest, just 5 to 15 here over the eastern interior, just 5 knots for the Panhandle, really light winds at this elevation. Ridge axis northward here, low center there over the Seward Peninsula, and 10 to 20 south-southwest, 10 to 20 for the eastern Arctic coast. North-northeast up to 40 knots there over the central Bering Sea. Southeast 40 to 50 knots, Kodiak Island, right up into the southwest interior and then back off the coast. So taking a look at turbulence, areas of moderate chop, very possible here. Kodiak Island, much of the southwest interior, Alaska Peninsula, and the Aleutians.
think he tried to blow his hat clean off, I think. I think you can wait in here if you like. We probably won't be very much longer. Yeah, watch the door so it won't. Matter of fact, could you shut this one so it won't blow? Okay, that's good. You wouldn't think about it, but one of the more important factors would probably be just a real good shovel. If you ever need a shovel, you'll want a good one. Sometimes the cheap, lighter models that are easy to pack will break or fail on you. It's real important to have a good snow shovel when you're going into these areas and operating on skis. Sometimes you really need it and you want it to work for you. See, where you can get in trouble is if you miss the spot, you can end up like you can't see those crevasses from down below when you come in from underneath like that. And if you miss it and you go too far, then you're right in the crevasses, and then you can't climb the glacier. Right. And then, oh man, I just hope, this doesn't encourage anybody falsely. As we're taking off, I'll try and keep the tail up and get off the glacier as quick as I can, probably what you'd call a short, soft field takeoff. And I'll be working with a mixture a little bit to get a peak GPH for our altitude. Skis locked, check.
Are we going uphill?
No, we can't, we're stuck.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at today's sea ice analysis, increase up here, progressing westward for out of Kotzebue Sound, beginning to close off a little bit there for the Chukchi Sea, and also Norton Sound, a tad bit more down here along the southwest coast, and also over northern Cook Inlet. Forecast the next 5 days, this will pinch off up here with marginal ice across the entire area north of the Bering Strait, and also a gradual continued westward progression of the pack ice here along the west coast and out of Norton Sound. Onto the marine forecast, southeast 15 to 20 here on the south coast tomorrow. Those seas 6 feet, and about 20 knots on the north coast with 5-foot seas. Lynn Canal, those northerlies coming down to 25 knots. 5-foot seas there, northeast 20 for Stevens Passage. Clarence Strait, southeast at about 15 with 3-foot seas. Outlook for Sunday, southeast 20 for Clarence Strait, and stronger winds here along the coast now, 30 knots out of the southeast on the south side, 12-foot seas, and gales, minimum gales for the North Gulf Coast here, the North Coast. Into the eastern North Gulf Coast, those kick up to 40 knots. Seas there building 12 to 14 feet to as high as 16 to 18 feet farther west. Lynn Canal still north 25 knots and north 20 for Stevens Passage with gale force gusts. Now for Prince William Sound, east 20 tomorrow, southeast 30 for the eastern North Gulf Coast, the western coast area zone there, east 35, 40 knots. The Barren Islands and 45 knots there into Kachemak Bay. We've got a 40-knot northeast wind in the forecast here for southern Cook Inlet with those seas up to 12 feet south of the Forelands. North of the Forelands, northeast 25 with 8-foot seas. And then for Sunday, even stronger winds here north of the Forelands. We're going 10-foot seas with northeast winds at 30 knots. 40-knot winds continue here south of the Forelands, southern Cook Inlet, and now east winds 50 knots. Kachemak Bay, storm warnings also out for the Barren Islands. And a full gale here for the North Gulf Coast, east 40 knots, and gales into Prince William Sound with seas building to 9 feet. Bristol Bay, east 40 knots tomorrow, northeast 40 for Shelikof Strait. Minimum gales here east side of Kodiak Island, and then going south 30 knots, under gale force from about Castle Cape to Cape Sarachev, east 30 knots on the north side of the peninsula. And for Sunday's outlook, south 40 knots here for the east side of Kodiak Island, southeast 45 up there across Bristol Bay. That'll be the strongest wind zone there in this set, with south winds coming down to 20 knots here all the way from Sitkinak to Cape Sarachev, southeast 20 on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula there with 5-foot seas, small craft advisories for Bristol Bay. And for the Aleutians, north to northeast 30 to 35 knots there for those western zones. And central Aleutians, northeast 25 to 35 knots, strongest on the Bering Sea side of the chain. And south to southeast or so, basically a southerly component here for the Fox Islands, 25 knots. So seas, though, up to 20 feet there on the Pacific side. And then for Sunday, those seas come down 13 to 14 feet here for Sunday. South 20 on the north side there. And then swinging around to the northwest at 20 knots with 13-foot seas, 20 to 25-knot northerlies for Adak and Atka with 13 to 14-foot seas, small craft advisories all the way out to the Komodorskis. And for the southwest coast, east-northeast, 40 knots tomorrow, right on down across the Pribilof Islands where seas will be close to 20 feet, 35 for St. Matthew Island and St. Lawrence Island down to 30 knots, going gale tomorrow night. And that'll continue through Sunday with 45-knot northeast winds, again, gusts 70 miles per hour, east 30 there, north of Nunivak Island, southeast 25 south of the island, 40 knotters still holding for St. Matthew Island, but just north at 10 for the Pribilofs for Sunday with seas coming down to 7 feet. Eastern Beaufort Sea coast, light winds, southwest 5 to 10, south 10 on the central coast, north 15, pick up to 20 knot here for Cape Lisburne, Point Hope area, northeast 15 for Kotzebue Sound and the Chukchi Sea. And then stronger winds in store for those areas on Sunday, northeast 30 knots from the strait right up to possibly Cape Beaufort, and then northeast 20. Light winds continue for the central and eastern coastlines. For tonight, again, wind, rain, snow spreading up into the Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island, possibly Bristol Bay to the Pribilofs, wrapping back into the Aleutians. With that system, no change for the Panhandle. Central side west, areas of light snow and clouds, cold and dry here continuing in the eastern areas. For tomorrow, Not much change here in the east or the panhandle, but increasing moisture, the front coming northward and southeast flow, which tomorrow, or on Sunday, winter storm warning for St. Lawrence Island.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.